Happy Halloween! I was saving this candy to hand out to trick-or-treaters, but I haven't eaten in 12 days. Welcome to the Fake Museum Experiment. It is day 13 and I am human subject 957. I haven't found the exit yet, but perhaps I could just blow a hole through the wall using one of the exhibits from the Ludicrous Weapons from History display. Seems one of the greatest geniuses in human history might have been the inventor of some of the earliest recorded unwieldy weapons. Leonardo da Vinci, who you may know from such hits as the Mona Lisa, the Vitruvian Man, and rhombocubohedron, was also responsible for designing a crossbow, a tank, and a machine gun. Now, crossbows, tanks, and machine guns may not sound like anything out of the ordinary. In fact, if you're like me, you probably have one of each in your broom closet. But Da Vinci was anything but ordinary. Actually, he very well might have been a mythical giant. The crossbow he invented was 86 feet long. At least it had wheels, rendering it slightly more mobile for us mortals. The tank, however, as designed, was completely immobile. With the tank, Da Vinci started by drawing a picture of a spaceship. Then he added some gears. The idea was that two guys could sit inside and operate a pair of cranks. One would propel the spaceship forward, the other would make it turn in one direction or the other. But the spaceship had as many cranks as it had fatal flaws. For one, it was made of wood, and while the 15th century was a more primitive time than our own, it wasn't like man hadn't already invented fire. And for another, Da Vinci made a crucial error in the drawing of the gears that would prevent it from moving forward. Turning would still work though, so if what you needed in a tank was just a spinning, flaming thing, Da Vinci was your man. His machine gun might have been the most hilarious of his war appliances. Whereas the crossbow and tank had wheels to at least facilitate the illusion of mobility, the only wheel present on the otherwise stationary machine gun was a human hamster wheel. 4 crossbows would be triggered in succession upon rotation of the hamster wheel, which required several strong men to operate. It's unclear if you could even aim with this thing, but at least the strong men were protected by yet another piece of wood. Now, in Leonardo da Vinci's defense, this was all pretty advanced thinking for the time, and the prevalent theory about the gears in the spaceship was that he drew them incorrectly on purpose to prevent his secrets from falling into the wrong hands. Also, da Vinci's tank would have definitely survived any battle with the Soviets in the 1930s and 40s, whose brilliant ideas for ground combat during World War II included trained anti-tank dogs. Now, I'll give the Soviets bonus points for having a novel premise. The idea was to strap a bomb to a dog, train that dog to run under a tank and unstrap the bomb with its teeth, and then run home. Training lasted about 6 months before it was determined that the dogs couldn't pull off the unstrapping part, so naturally it was decided to just detonate the dogs. And to a degree, the dogs were an unqualified success on the battlefield. Except they'd been trained by the Soviets to run under Soviet tanks, which is what they did. The enemy remained unscathed, at least as it pertained to the dogs. Anti-tank dogs aren't the only animal-based weapon we saw during World War II. A dentist from Irwin, Pennsylvania named Lytle S. Adams was listening to a radio news broadcast when he learned about the Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor. Outraged, he immediately concocted his idea for the Bat Bomb, a bomb filled with bats! He submitted it to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who of course approved it immediately. The US military spent $2 million developing a bombshell casing that would house up to 40 bats, each carrying a small incendiary device. After dropping the bomb, but well before it hit the ground, the casing would open, releasing the bats to go perch in the rafters of various and presumably flammable Japanese structures. The bat bombs, had they ever been used, would have theoretically burned entire villages to the ground with minimal casualties. But after a while of R&D, the chief of naval operations got bored and put the kibosh on the whole project, electing to drop an atomic bomb on Japan instead. Maybe you heard about that one. This was well before the 1950s, when the US military managed to come up with one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, the M388 Davy Crockett. The Davy Crockett was developed in response to fears of a Soviet ground attack in Europe during the Cold War, hopefully long after the Soviets had given up on those dogs. About the size of a bazooka, it was actually an atomic bomb on a tripod designed to be transported and operated by any of your run-of-the-mill infantrymen, basically placing the capability to create a post-apocalyptic wasteland in the hands of Gomer Pyle. The aiming mechanism wasn't particularly precise either, not that that mattered. The Davy Crockett had a range of less than 1.5 miles, and if one were to accidentally discharge at anything less than half a mile, you might be lucky enough to die before turning into a ghoul. Happy Halloween! Anyway, I somehow doubt any of these weapons will be useful to anyone trapped in a fake museum or even somebody sitting in front of a green sheet. If you'd like to learn more about ludicrous weapons from history, look it up. And if you already know more, leave your wisdom in the comments. This is Human Subject 957, signing off.